And now, FAIRFAX Breakfast Club with your host, Basile Lemba.
Hello, my name is Basile and welcome to the FAIRFAX Breakfast Club. This is a program in which we bring you practical networking concepts and other valuable information you can use to truly expand your business. We always start with a quote, and today's quote is in alignment with the following networking basics: networking versus selling. When you go to a networking event, make a point of registering properly and do put your business card in the receptacle if they are collecting cards. This will allow the organizers to capture your information and keep you posted on future events and or send you other valuable information. So that is the tip of today. I'm very glad to tell you that today we have a very special guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a minute. And that is Goldberg, the owner of Briar Patch Bed and Breakfast Inn. Hi, Ellen. Welcome to our show.
Hi, Basile. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Why don't you introduce yourself and then tell the host what you do exactly.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I'm really very pleased to be here. As Basile said, I'm the owner of Briar Patch Bed and Breakfast Inn. We're in Middleburg, Virginia. And for those of you who don't know where it is, it's about 45 minutes west of Fairfax, straight out Route 50. And it's in the rolling hills of Virginia. We have mountain views. We actually have 47 acres. It was a former farm, a former dairy farm, that my husband and I purchased about 10 or 11 years ago. And it was a really rundown old property with a 200-year-old home and other outbuildings. And we spent about a year renovating with the idea in mind to turn it into a bed and breakfast. And the old house has 8 bedrooms, and we have a separate cottage. So we have 9 bedrooms with 2 to a room. That's 18 people. And with some events, they squeeze in even more people, so we can hold about 20 people or even 22. And so our main business is a bed and breakfast where people stay overnight and come out on weekends, weekdays, and enjoy the beautiful countryside. We have wineries in our area. We're in Loudoun County and on the border with Fauquier County. And between the 2 counties, there are well over 25 wineries in our area. And there's lots of other things to do, hiking, lots of horse events. They still actually do fox hunting out in our area. We're a great area to come out and just enjoy the countryside. In addition to that, my husband and I took an old tractor shed barn that was on the property and turned it into an event building. And we can hold events up to 200 people indoors.
Wow.
And we are hosting social events such as weddings and parties and parties of all sorts, birthday parties, anniversary parties, fundraisers for nonprofit organizations, and then business meetings, primarily during the week. We'll do the business meetings. And this event building is one of the only buildings in our area that can hold that amount of people. And so when people come out to Briar Patch for events, it's a way for them to have, a beautiful destination type of event without going that far outside of DC.
Makes sense. And I guess I'll have to come and visit them, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, one of the things that makes us a little bit different from other places is that when we do events, particularly weddings, which is probably our biggest source of revenue these days, is our wedding business. I consider ourselves a destination wedding location because when we do a wedding, people are coming for the entire weekend. So unlike when you have a wedding in a hotel or even in another venue that just has the event space, people can come for the whole weekend. So what really is special for us and for the wedding party is they come on Friday, then they stay all weekend long till Sunday, and they take over the entire place exclusively for the whole weekend. And last year we did almost 60 weddings. We did 59 weddings last year, as well as other events.
I have a question for you. If you have a place for 200 and you only have 22 rooms, where do the people stay?
Yes, well, we're very fortunate in that our location, while it is rural, we're right on Route 50, and we are about 20 minutes from Chantilly, from Leesburg,
I see.
from Dulles Airport, and all three of those areas have a lot of hotels.
I see, okay.
And what's really great is that these hotels are mostly business-oriented hotels, so their weekend rates are excellent.
Gotcha.
And I have some good relationships with some of these hotels where they will give us amazingly good rates for wedding parties to book rooms. And if they book a minimum of like 10 rooms, some of them will even allow us to use, or allow them to use their shuttle, their airport shuttle, to bring people to and from Briar Patch. And when we're talking about a social event where people are drinking, it's a really good idea for them to provide this shuttle service.
Then they can drink without worry about who's driving.
Right. That's exactly right. And it helps us not have to worry about, the liability of people drinking and leaving. And of course, the wedding couple doesn't have to worry about their guests, going off the property drunk. And the fact is that with, 20 people or so staying on the property for the weekend, this is an opportunity for brides and grooms to have their family and closest friends stay for the whole weekend. And not just hectic, go from one place to another. They can do everything on site. We, in fact, have a swimming pool. And in most of the good amount of the year, they're able to do their rehearsal dinner outside by the pool as a barbecue. And we're also one of the few sites in the area that allow people to bring in their own caterer. The only meal that we provide on a regular basis is breakfast, because we're a bed and breakfast. And so when people host their own events at Briar Patch, they bring in their own caterer. And we are actually in one of the few properties that don't charge extra to bring in outside caterers. So we're, and that's true of whether they do a wedding or any kind of event that can bring in any outside caterers.
Very good, excellent. Now, I do know that you host a networking luncheon once a month. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes. Well, this started about 3 years ago, and I can't take total credit for it. There is a master networker in the area by the name of Christina Buweri, who owns Reston Limousine. And she started a women's networking group a few years ago called Reston Limousine. Or her company is Reston Limousine, and she started a networking group called Sterling Women. And I know you've been to it, so you know who I'm talking about and what that event is all about.
Absolutely.
Well, Christina was at an event at Briar Patch one day, and she said to me, you really ought to do a Sterling Women out here. And you've got Middleburg area, and Western Loudoun County has, tremendous amount of businesses that have started to grow up in that area, and you have a beautiful property. So why don't you consider, starting a networking event of your own? And at that point, I had already been doing a fair amount of networking, and decided that, yeah, I could do this. And she served as my mentor in helping me establish the event at Briar Patch. Of course, we do have some overlap. And therefore, I felt it important that I make some, a little bit of changes so that people could go to Sterling Women and to Middleburg Women, which is my networking group, and still feel that they're going to get something out of it.
Absolutely.
And so what I thought of when I set up my networking group is several things, several goals that I established for the group. One is certainly to, bring people together to do business. And that's, the ultimate goal of networking.
Absolutely.
But in addition to that, I had several other criteria or several other goals that I was trying to achieve. For me, one was to get people to come and see an event at Briar Patch and experience it, so that if in the future they were to have a need for a business meeting, a wedding, a party, or other event, they will have already experienced my event site and could think of us in the future if they had a need.
Absolutely.
Another reason was, it's a women's networking group, and there's definitely a need among women to just get together and share. And so when I set up the speaking list of who I wanted to have as speakers, I made a decision that I was not going to just have high-powered women with, multi-million-dollar businesses, but I was going to bring in women who had really interesting stories to tell. So yes, there's a business component, and we even have a time during the networking event where you can do business. People can take a table and sell their wares or give out their materials. But I also felt it important that there be an educational and even an inspirational component, so that when people come to Middleburg Women, they're going to meet interesting people. They're going to potentially, get some business done, but they're also going to learn something and maybe even be inspired. And the way this happens really is through when I ask a speaker to come to Middleburg Women, I tell them it's a very safe place for them to tell their personal story. And it really is. I think when people come to Middleburg Women, they feel comfortable telling some very intimate things about their past. I've had women talk about being, a young teenage pregnant mother. I've had others talk about, growing up in the foster care system. And I've had, just all sorts of really personal, inspirational stories. And when I talk to the speakers, I basically say, tell us your life story, your life journey, and what lessons that you've learned along the way that you want to share. And so it's not just tell me about your business, tell me about how you market or make money, or, it's really, what have you learned in your life? And then most people then use that to apply to, well, how did they get into their business? A lot of these women have made, changes in their life, started new businesses, left the corporate world, and I think a lot of people in the audience are thinking about making some of these changes, so they're inspired listening to other people's stories. And the last reason that I've established it was to get people to come out to Western Loudoun County and to appreciate the beauty of the area.
Yeah, I was here you talked about the hills a minute ago.
Yes, and we are about 4 miles from the town of Middleburg. So
I think you can see some of the pictures here of that area.
Yes, and I would love to have you show some pictures of my property a little bit more, because it really gives a feel for what we're all about. For instance, our property has a 200-year-old house, as I mentioned, and the event building. But in addition to that, we have some beautiful horse paddocks, and we also have, as I said, a swimming pool. And then in the general area, we're 4 miles from the town of Middleburg.
Okay.
And I always encourage people to take the time after the luncheon, if they have the time, to go and visit the shops, because I feel it's very important that people go to the local retailers and support, local businesses. So that started about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it actually has evolved. So each year I try to, make a change and keep people coming back. We average around 50 women coming to each luncheon, with some luncheons bigger than that. And one of the big attractions this year that grew the event was that quarterly, in the third month of every quarter, meaning March, June, September, and December, I established something called a subject-oriented panel. So other than having the women talk about their life journey, on those months, I have a panel on a particular subject.
Gotcha.
Where I bring 3 or 4 women, experts in a particular field. So this is sort of the educational component that I like to bring to what I'm doing. And we've had panels on women in health and wellness. We had a panel on women in communications. And we've had a panel on women in finance. And probably our most popular was in December. We had a panel on women in beauty and fashion, which, December was great.
Gotcha.
I had our most well-attended event, and I'm planning some more fun panels this year.
Okay.
And then this year, in addition to doing the panels, another thing that I'm bringing in is, for me, it's very important to give back to the community. And there are just so many nonprofits that are worthy of support. And rather than just pick one for me to support, what I've decided to do is to invite a nonprofit to be kind of the featured nonprofit at each of our luncheons, except on the ones when I do the panel, because the panel is already filled. But on the other months, we're going to invite a nonprofit to have about a five-minute period to talk about their nonprofit. We're going to give them a display table during the networking period for people to talk even more about what they do and give people an opportunity to donate. And when we send out our notice, I have an email list of about 3,000 women. So even though I get 50 or so on average coming, and it's a different group, I send it out to 3,000 people so that nonprofit will get a lot of exposure, not just to the people who attend. And then finally, I personally, or Briar Patch, we're going to donate to each of the nonprofits that are featured. Okay. So I think it's really something I'm really excited about, to make a change, to give back, and to use the networking not only for doing business and not only for the other goals that I mentioned, but also to help give back to the community.
Good. Excellent.
Okay.
Very good. My question to you now, what is you consider your biggest challenge?
In the networking or in my business?
That's up to you.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about both. The biggest challenges in the networking is finding the time to organize it all. I do make some money. Basically, I bring in a local caterer. I feature a different caterer each time. And so I have a markup, a slight markup on what I charge for the event versus what I pay the caterer. And that's for my time to put it all together. And in addition to that, I have a couple of other women who help me, particularly in the panels, in giving me ideas for speakers. And I use a lot of barter. So for instance, the florist who provides flowers to the tables at our networking event, it's a barter arrangement, and she gives me the flowers and I give her the promotion at each of the events. But it is a lot of work to recruit the speakers, and of course I have wonderful staff who staff the table to check people in and to make the programs, and we do door prizes, and to solicit the door prizes and give them out at the end. So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge for the networking is just the creativity, trying to think of ways to keep it interesting.
Sure.
And to, if I'm going to be doing this year after year, which I hope to continue to do, because it's been great for me. I personally feel like there's a lot of benefit that I'm providing to the community by doing it, and also I'm getting a lot out of it personally. But it definitely does take a lot of time, and it takes time, away from what I have to do to run the business.
Sure.
From a business standpoint for Briar Patch, I guess our big, as in any business, what challenges do you have? You have, personnel, dealing with. I'm a small business, right? I only have about 5 or 6 employees. But you always have, there's always something. As soon as you get more than 2 people together in any organization, you've got issues, personnel issues, right? So we have to deal with those. And then you know, I focus on marketing. So personally, you know, I have 2 young ladies who run the business, the operating part of the business day to day, although my husband and I are there a lot. He still has his day job, works at the Pentagon. He's there every weekend with me. He's my best salesman for weddings, believe it or not. And, you know, but another challenge is just, you know, to keep the business coming in. Because now I'm responsible for payroll for these 5 or 6 people. And I do feel, you know, every day the challenge of making sure that I'm bringing in the business to keep the business running.
Sure.
So those are some of my biggest challenges.
Okay, good, excellent. Now, my next question to you, what advice would you give to somebody in the field of networking?
Well, number 1, I think, is to go into it with the right attitude. You're not going to necessarily make a deal that's going to bring you, you know, bottom line business at every networking event you're going to go to. So I think my advice is that your attitude toward networking should be a positive, you know, I'm going to meet some new people. I'm going to, you know, make some interesting contacts. And what I try to do is to try to, you know, pick 1 or 2 people at each event that kind of hone in on that I can think of maybe having some connection to. And I try to follow up, at least to establish a personal contact after the event. And I definitely have found that I've definitely done business as a result of networking, but not as a result of every event. And the other advice that I would give is this. I would categorize networking into different networking groups, and some of them are going to have more direct benefit to you than others. I have found that the groups that give me the most direct benefit, believe it or not, are the ones in my own industry. Okay, so for me, my industry is the bed and breakfast industry and the event industry. In the event industry, I'm in several wedding networking groups. And weddings are very much a referral business. I mean, we certainly get our business directly from the internet and from being on wedding directories and other event directories. But a lot of our business comes from other wedding vendors recommending us or being on their event sites, being on their sites.
And I'm probably listened to most because, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. And brides and grooms, you know, do take those recommendations from a vendor they've already picked. Let's say, you know, they've picked their photographer. Or in our case, we're often one of the first ones they pick, the venue, the place where they're going to have their wedding.
Makes sense.
And if I make a recommendation for a caterer, or photographer, or florist, you know, they're going to take that seriously. And as a result, I actually have a recommended list that we keep, and there's no compensation that I take from anybody to be on my list. It's more people that I've, you know, determined over time are really good vendors. And so these networking groups are very key in building those relationships to do the referrals. And interestingly enough, I have found that I'm talking not just about referrals to other vendors like florists and photographers, but even other event sites. In other words, my direct competitors. Because what we found is, you know, there are certain brides and grooms want certain dates. And if I'm already booked, I would rather keep that business in my area than have them go elsewhere. So I have no problem giving recommendations for them to go to other event sites in my area. And if I hadn't visited them, if I hadn't been comfortable with the other owners, and you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable making those referrals. So it's through those networking groups that I've come to know these people. So I find that in my industry, very key. In the bed and breakfast industry, we have locally a group called the Loudoun County Bed and Breakfast Guild.
Interesting.
And there we're doing co-marketing. So we have a website, loudenbnb.com, where we are referring to each other. And again, if I'm full, I'd rather they go to a Loudoun County bed and breakfast rather